Let us pray. Loving and gracious creativity, God, we acknowledge your presence in each one of us and among us here gathered. This wide earth and the far reaches of the universe, far beyond our limited human comprehension, is the result of creativity, which we can never fully comprehend. We bow in awe and reverence when the heavens declare the glory, your glory. In humbleness, we come now to let the words of my limited mouth and the contemplations of our finite brains be acceptable in your sight, to continue to renew and to transform us. Amen. After last night's spirit-filled experience, I must confess that I was encouraged, I was inspired, as many of you were, by Bishop Yvette. If I had been told when I was invited to speak that I would follow Bishop Yvette, you know what I would have said, but was caught unprepared and had to suffer for it. But Bishop Yvette is very kind and gracious and stayed away so that she is not present to intimidate me further. Milk is far too kind. And I'm not used to receive those kind remarks. Let me preface what I say this morning to give you a little background and also to express sincerely my gratitude to God and my amazement in this comparatively short space of time of a little over 10 years for FCC. We started from ground zero, renting 4 different places within this space of time, and to come now this year to purchase this space and set it aside as sacred ground. About 5 years ago, unknown to me, Miak says he has accepted a call to be the pastor of this congregation. It took the Methodist Church in Malaysia and Singapore 55 years before I was sent to the United States to do my theological education and to prepare myself for the Christian ministry. FCC took only 5 years. So I approached my friend, Dr. Jeffrey Kwan, who was the Dean, Pacific School of Religion, one of the early centers for gender studies. Here is a man. You train him and send him back to us. God was good. God is good. Miak responded to the challenge of the call of the ministry, accepted it, left his lucrative job as an IT person, sold his comfortable apartment, completed his theological training in the center of LGBT activity in California, Pacific School of Religion, and now returned, ordained by MCC to be the first, only, fully ordained, full-time, open pastor. And as we know now, he is making history, not only in the LGBT community here in Singapore, but throughout the wider community in the region. We thank God for his commitment to serve. Naturally, I have a great appreciation for the people in FCC, for Gary, tireless worker, and organizing the move to this place, which only 2 months ago was an open space. And he and his workers have created this sacred sanctuary for the work of God. Thank you. It was really with reluctance that I appear before you, especially in the presence of distinguished visitors from overseas, well-known pioneers in the LGBT movement, and making their tremendous contributions to further the cause of justice and peace. I tried to say no, but you know Miak, he insisted, and it's hard to resist. And therefore, it's actually with reluctance that I dare to stand before you. You see, I am but an accidental activist in the gay movement here in Singapore. As an outsider, I'm privileged to be connected with FCC from its inception. Miak felt that my observation and insights are of some value to FCC and to all of you who come from your respective churches. Miak has said too much and exaggerated hugely what I have done. But allow me to add a little bit to temper it, to know I'm but human, and to know that I was not born a Christian. I was baptized when I finished my secondary school in Ipoh in Malaysia. It was in the Methodist Church in Ipoh that I was baptized by a missionary, Ralph Kessering, who graduated from Garrett Evangelical School in Evanston, Illinois. I find it strange that the only sermon I remembered, and many of my sermons I don't even remember myself, that this one particular sermon that I listened to when I was 18 years old, and it etched in my mind since then. One sermon about a minor prophet, Amos. Let justice roll down like waters and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. What was more strange was that after he died and was buried in the town and in the country where he loved, and I participated in burying him in Ipoh, his daughter, not knowing anything about my relationship to the sermon, was rummaging through his archives and found this particular sermon with his handwritten notes. And I don't know who or what, or at least I think, I believe, prompted her to send it to me with the original handwritten notes. And this is the foundation brick that I built my theological structure. When I came back, I began my ministry in serving as a pastor in 3 churches. And in 1961, I was appointed the pastor of the Kuala Lumpur Wesley Methodist Church in Malaysia. And after my experience in the United States and knowing about Washington, D.C., I copied maybe from one of the churches the tagline of the Kuala Lumpur Wesley congregation, witnessing for Christ in the heart of the nation's capital. And actually, there were cabinet ministers of the government then who were Christians who worshiped there. And there was only one opposition member, and those from Malaysia will know Dr. Tan Chi Kun, a warrior, a campaigner for the marginalized. He too was a lay leader in my church, and under his influence, Mr. Opposition helped me, pushed me to be identified with those who were oppressed. And it was also there that Dr. Tan Chi Kun invited Anwar Ibrahim who is still the opposition leader today. And that was the background that I had, that God provided and opened for me, which led me to do the things that I tried to do. Yes, I am an accidental activist. For the Prime Minister of Singapore made a public declaration in an interview with the influential Time magazine. He declared that the Singapore government will not discriminate against the LGBT for admission to the civil service in the country, even if those were sensitive areas of government. Immediately, the National Council of Churches in Singapore declared that homosexuality is a sin, just to remind the people. For a few years then, I was told that some of the gays in Singapore, and Miak was included, had been meeting secretly at Safe Haven, the precursor of Free Community Church. I was not aware of its existence. They were very clever in hiding themselves. It was a great risk, and you had to be interviewed before you can join Safe Haven. In the course of my ministry, I knew there were some people who were not like me. In fact, a family friend who is a midwife, a Chinese midwife, comes always in a men's Chinese costume. Something strange, but we never ask questions. Gays were closeted. The question of homosexuality was settled. With my passion for social justice, I wrote a simple letter to the local press in support of this new government policy. And immediately, the leadership in Haven invited me for dinner. And actually, without any hesitation, I responded and volunteered to support them in their struggle and journeyed with them. My talk will explore the nature and ministry of this church, but it is not only for FCC, but hopefully that you can resonate within your own churches as I share with you what we are here struggling to do together. I will therefore explicate the principle of inclusivity, and hopefully that you can apply some of your principles as you look and view your own church and challenge by your own peculiar context, which may and may not be different from the Singapore context. Basically, I'm trying to respond to the question, what is the shape of a truly inclusive church that we are in the process of building? The inclusivity of the membership here is my first point. The religious affiliation of most of the LGBT who form FCC are from the evangelical and charismatic churches that were more openly homophobic. The mainline churches were a bit more careful. They don't say that they are affirmative. They won't say so openly that they are anti the gay movement. For a long time, the churches keep silent, and they continue to do so, most of them. And for a long time, and continue to do so, LGBT people remain closeted, isolated. Open condemnation most frequently comes from the conservative fundamentalist congregations. And for a while, daringly, they will talk about it, attack it from their pulpits. Known gays who were serving so faithfully, like Gary, in a major church were asked, not so politely, please find someplace else. And God gave Gary to FCC. We thank God. As soon as FCC was established, we became the targets, we became the victims, and what I like to call, we were sinned against. People who were sinners attacked us. We were sinned against for being who we are. And even a secular government or prime minister can say, including the great Lee Kuan Yew, they are born this way. My own Methodist church, which is the largest mainline churches, was quick to dissociate themselves from me and stated publicly again the official teaching of the church that homosexuality is a sin. They kept quiet about it until this occasion. And then later on, legislated it only about 5 years ago, officially in the teaching of the church. So they tried to charge me for not obeying the teaching of the church, and they literally made an official charge, and we could be tried, and I could have been tried. But I was smart enough, and I said, okay, you put a charge, even to continue with it, I will charge you, and some of you are leaders, for obeying the church teaching, and in the Methodist tradition of total abstinence of alcohol, including beer. They were not stupid. They quickly withdraw the charge, and they just don't know what to do with me. The attacks in Singapore by these churches continue. Aware, which is the women's rights movement, was a victim of what we call steeplejacking. They tried to take over. They joined, encouraged their members of a particular Church of the Savior, an Anglican church, which carries on reparative therapy till today, to join as members, and took ownership of this women's rights group. And its leader, a renowned lawyer, said she is a feminist activist, mentor. And her daughter, if you like to read her terrible speech in the parliament, made some very graphic distortions about same-sex relations, which I dare not repeat in this polite audience. And one, the focus of the attack happens to be comprehensive sexuality education in the school, which was sponsored by this organization. And for some reason, I'd been working with them and supporting them and had to raise the money for this particular part of the program. And I was publicly exposed for the promotion of sex. But fortunately, we organized ourselves. We also put in new members, responded overwhelmingly, and got the votes to secure back what was rightly theirs, and they are still in existence. So we were not able to continue the battle and provide the kind of sexuality education that we need in the schools. So when they came to me again, I said, okay, we just mark our time. We will continue to do it because we know it's important. We know it's the promotion of safe sex. We know it leads to the issue of LGBT rights. And so I said, produce a booklet with the educational material on comprehensive sexuality education. And so they did. And you know, I had to tell my wife what the title of the book says. They very cutely placed bold letters of the title of this sex book for use, WTF. We must have some copies in our library. But that did not end. For they know what the future looks like. People are beginning to accept. So they are gatekeepers, as you know, of tradition, of conservatism, of homophobia. And so, when Pink Dot, where many of us were associated with, and many of you know now, organized their annual Pink Dot rally, this particular group of Christians under the guise of Love Singapore, which is a group of a number of congregations of various denominations and independent churches, launched a counter campaign. And at what time they began to say they wear red, that's it. And then they aligned themselves quite foolishly with a Muslim fundamentalist organization which is supposed to wear white. And so they had a counter campaign. But they failed miserably and really got the Muslim community quite dissatisfied of being connected with this Christian group who actually don't love Muslims, but still seek to convert them under the guise of love. Because for them, there's only one name. And Allah is not one of them. Is that all? No. They're blocked here, they're blocked there. And so now, those of you who are familiar with the Full Gospel Assembly, the leaders of that ancient movement, conservative, homophobic, foolishly, the whole leadership of the current movement formed along with some of the people that they did not seem to be transparent, invited them to have a secular organization known as Honor Singapore. As soon as the names appeared, we alerted that this is a religious movement carrying on their form of crusade against the marginalized. Can you imagine? They came out after a period of silence and publicly declare, we are not a religious organization. I said, what does your religion, my question is, what does your religion say to you that you can act irreligiously and claim to do so? I thought religion affects the total area of our lives. And whatever we are engaged in, we have already broke down the walls of secularism. They are now trying to find out how to respond to this situation. And we will expect a continued attack on the marginalized movement. More interestingly, the Singapore government very patiently is charging the City Harvest Church for siphoning millions of dollars to support a campaign of the wife of the founder to launch an evangelistic program really to the secular art scene in the United States. And the trial continues. And all of us know that the conviction will come in a matter of time. Yet, they try to justify and found it difficult. We know that we have to be vigilant to protect ourselves from these kinds of vicious attacks, unfair attacks. The difference between FCC, like the churches that you come from, now maintain that the difference is on whether we'll welcome LGBT people into the membership of the churches and to leadership in the Christian movement in your church. So we always flash in FCC our welcome home. We even originally composed a song, Welcome, which I'm surprised we have not sung yet.
I'm surprised too.
So we will have our mantra, welcome home, regardless. Every Sunday we say that and remind ourselves and to the people who come, the visitors who come, we welcome you regardless of race, religion, sexual orientation, gender, and economic status. That's our mantra. So we do a good job in some sense of welcoming. We try to be very hospitable, as was indicated in last evening's session. I must say that we work very hard. You can see them even now in this conference, guiding you from the very door to this intricate maze to come to this particular space. We are able to attract the members who were rejected by the former churches, which still disapprove same-sex relations. They come. They have the pluck of enough courage to come, to find acceptance and feel at home. Slowly, when they come, without any pressure, they reconcile their faith with their sexuality. In spite of the baggage, heavy baggage of their theological conditioning from the churches they were before. I've asked permission. She reluctantly agreed for me to share. Those of you who know Jamie, she's responsible for many things here in this assembly, including all your food and your drinks. She ordered all the drinks, 600, 700, I don't know how many hundreds of bottles. You know, when she first came in the early days, she was so scared. She wore a baseball cap all through the service. Won't speak to anyone. Won't dare look at anyone too long, eye to eye, no. She was threatened, intimidated. I saw this and I said, I must reach out to this person. You know that today, without any theological formal training, she preaches from this pulpit. And she's better than me. Amazing transformation. Unplanned, unstructured. But God moves in a mysterious way, His wonders to perform anytime. This is what is happening here in this congregation. There are many other cases of that sort. And I stand on the sidelines, quietly thanking God. I watch the transformation. And I say to myself, this is the right place. I have no time to smell the roses after retiring. Actually, I was officially retired for 20 years. And they tell me, when are you going to retire? I say, what do I do when I retire? As long as I'm useful and can make some contribution, I stand in solidarity and make myself available. And those experiences come. Those forms of service appear. I must be honest with you, and we are dealing with a problem. That transformation can take a very slow pace. I said we have been here for about 10 years. But those who were here 10 years ago, more than half of them are not here now. And the congregation is hovering on the plateau before we moved here of around 100 every Sunday. And each Sunday, there were many youthful seekers. Our doors are wide open to welcome them. And unfortunately, our doors are equally wide open for them to depart at the back. Or we have a revolving door. So we have a fluctuating, fluid membership and a transient one. And an unkind comment would be, we are more like a hotel or a hospital instead of a home. Forgive us. We are doing the best. We know the problem. And we hope you can share and help us to answer this problem. Why does the revolving door swing around so much? I must also recognize that there's a large LGBT community in Singapore who appreciate what we do, but are not compelled to be part of us. And that is a challenge for us when we cannot reach our own people, fellow sufferers, and victims of stigma and discrimination. Inclusivity must also recognize there's a large number of what you may want to call not religious LGBT. And we are the only religious institution that will affirm them. A few from the Muslim faith and a larger number from the Buddhist or Taoist faith come to us. And we tell them we are not interested in evangelizing you. It's your decision. We are still trying to serve the large group who may be suffering. I'm sure they're suffering without any religious support from other faith communities. And that's why I continue to relate to other faith communities, although they don't agree with what I'm doing. Jeffrey Kwan is coming here next month. He is, if you do not know, pioneering a great new experiment of theological education in the future, where the theological education, even for the Christian ministry, is not limited to Christian education, but an interfaith faculty. So he is bringing 2 imams here and asked me to arrange a dialogue. So I have met with one of the leading imams in Singapore in his very influential mosque. And we are going to have a session together to learn what we need to do in interfaith relations. Secondly, inclusivity must include the lesbians on an equal basis. You know, I'm still learning, you know. It was here that I hear these lesbians telling me, oh, FCC is misogynist. I said, what is that word? Clean? Is it in the Urban Dictionary? Misogynist is their claim, and rightly so. I mingle with them. Hey, I said, why are you guys all here? You're lesbians all here. You go and visit in the kopitiam or the food store. You will sit in one table. The others sit out the table. And they tell me sometimes, oh, we are wired that way. I said, don't tell me that one. They feel. And some of us belong to the different gender, don't realize that. They feel also being dominated. But things are changing, and very rapidly. Let me just illustrate. So we had the annual women's event, which tries to encourage and support the lesbians in FCC. So the last event last month, the women were so touched that they had to quietly tell them, we have this meeting, but sorry, you are not included as gays. They were quite good to do that, to acknowledge that, and help we male chauvinists to be a little bit more careful. But the women were touched last month when one of us, not me, sent an anonymous donation for the women's event because this person wanted for them to have better food, flowers maybe, or whatever is needed to make this event special. And Pauline, the leader, expressed how sweet and loving gesture FCC is in overcoming the gender divide. And let me warn you guys, the lesbians are moving, they're at parity with you, and they will, but they won't dominate you. Inclusivity must recognize all those who are defined as LGBT Last session, last night, the question was asked by our own FC's people, how do we deal with the transgender? Yes, it's a difficult issue. We don't know how to do it. But you were right. Just to be friend to them. They are human. You don't know how to minister to them. Listen to them. And so more and more transgender people feel the welcome here. Thirdly, inclusivity includes the straight community. I know a little bit better on this issue. When I started to come here and lend my little support, some of them followed me. Some out of curiosity. Some of them are parents whose children are gay or lesbians. And there is sincere interest. There are many out there who are looking for an alternative church, different from what they are experiencing in their churches and in their community. What we as churches here and in your own country must realize that out there, they have questions about the prevailing life and mission of their churches. They are taking the soft way out of their commitment to the ministry of the Christian movement, the authentic one. We must realize that those who come have questions. Whether it's a fundamentalist, evangelical, conservative, or mainline church, there is a growing disenchantment with established Christian churches as well as other faith communities. They are looking for an alternative. And they are suffering just as much as you do on the issue of sexual orientation. They are suffering in their own churches. Apart from this issue, if we do not appreciate that, then we are not ourselves inclusive of the straight community. They don't want to be an ally. They want to be just with you.
Yes.
They are hungry, spiritually hungry. Although some critics, not me, I hope, saying that we are not spiritually fed when we come here. I don't know what that means. If we are not spiritually fed, where else can they go? Do we recognize really that they are looking for alternatives? And many of them have given up. Those who have chosen to belong to any religion are increasing. They call themselves in their census no religion. In 1900, it was only 14.3% according to our census. In 2010, 10 years, it has risen to 17%. The Christian population increased from 12.7% to 18.3% Catholic and Protestants combined in Singapore. Take the United States in your survey of the Pew Religion and Public Life Project. A fifth of those polled of the population say that they are not religiously affiliated. And 37% of this group who are not religiously affiliated say they are spiritual but not religious. Do you know there's a great movement indicating the hunger for spirituality, and no one is providing them adequately. For they see that the rising phenomenon is that people view religion as associated with public realm of membership in religious institutions, participation in formal rituals, adherence to official religious doctrines, and subscribing to traditional religious creeds. And spirituality is regarded as associated with the private realm of religious thought and experience. If any one of you would like to offer an alternative for those spiritual and religious, this is the opportunity before it is too late. It's already late enough. As much as our conservative churches hold on to the supremacy of Christianity and the hope of converting all people into Christ, and there's no other name. And Christ is the only way to salvation. Let's be honest. They are not going to be reaping their wishful desires or realizing their pious hopes. For all of conversion in Singapore, for instance, under the rubric Love Singapore, and the government knew that bluff and saw it and stopped them from distributing tracts to various homes in the public housing areas or stand in subways and distributing Christian pamphlets. This is what we have done in creating relationships with people of other faiths. I sense that there's an increasing number of people in your community and certainly in mine who are spiritual and not religious. My own children and grandchildren, given the freedom that they have to decide from themselves whether they relate to any church or not. Half of them do. And unfortunately, this half that do will always complain to me, what about the other members? Well, we will all wake up, hopefully, as a grandparent one day. With this religious and cultural backdrop, what then is the ministry of the church, like yours and mine? We should not remain as a gay church catering only for LGBT interests and trying to be exclusive when the heterosexuals are not adequately represented. This is a challenge for you. This is a challenge for this church. I hope you have a better record in what you are doing. Thirdly, inclusivity must involve not only ministry to the people, diverse people, but also in a mission to them. There's always a hope, a task to help the people to come to reconcile their faith with sexuality. And we are attracting not only Christians, but other seekers of faith. And we will continue to make this an important mission in any congregation. When we look at the LGBT community outside here in Singapore, we do not sense enough the responsibility of wounded people engaged in the process of healing of their fellow sufferers. Yet we welcome them and have not found it to be a priority and an essential component to deal with their issues and with their problems. We have been too used to live in isolation, thinking of ourselves, our individual selves, and leave those outside lonely, nursing their hurts. When we will feel a greater responsibility, even on the reconciling of faith with sexuality, for those who do not get it now. Here, moving to this place, we have taken a fresh effort to reach out under the term of dirty hands. A left hand of advocacy and a right hand of service. So we're involved with the ministry to the mentally challenged, befriending them. We are involved in the teaching of English to our migrant workers. We are involved also to reach out to the transgender community, which is the most despised and discriminated member of the LGBT community. We will have not only to serve them, but to escalate our efforts in advocacy so that we may be more concerned with human rights, the rights of women and workers. Lynette Chua, a professor of law in the law faculty of the National University of Singapore, interviewed a number of us as she tries to document what is the strategy for mobilizing the gays in the wider community outside. And this is what she has come to the conclusion and recommended for us to chew upon. She calls it pragmatic resistance in an authoritarian society. So it refers to this pragmatic resistance to achieve visibility and support for the LGBT, tackle political and cultural norms that suppress dissent, and oppose parliamentary practices. This tactic is to avoid direct confrontation with the law in an authoritative situation in our country. You have other forms of pragmatic resistance to what is prevailing in your own country. How inclusive are we if we do not include all these people in our mission agenda? We must resist the temptation to be, in effect, exclusive within the walls of this sacred space. We have to part the curtains, raise the screens, so that we may see creation out there groaning in travail. We cannot view religion exclusively as a private and personal individual matter. Likewise, we cannot only do service without a religious base. We strive. We must strive harder to be inclusive in personal and social salvation. Inclusively, finally, involves theology. And that's a hard piece of work. And more importantly, how we shape our own theology. For the final decision is with each one of us. Don't care too much as what others say, what others believe, or what the church teaches you. They teach many things. You have the responsibility to discern, evaluate, and form your decision and act accordingly for that moment in history. A church committed to the way of Jesus need to explore the theological foundations which we are called to base our life upon. I do not expect you to share my theology. I was fortunate to be exposed to what I believe and did not need to change that much. Even then, I must be open to change. And so from a liberal theology which has its faults, I continue to explore progressive theology. And I continue to watch what my friend Joe is doing on queer theology. Do we really recognize that we have to unload our theological baggage and undergo the process of construction, destruction, and construction, and that process goes on without an end as long as our life exists? Do we realize? And do we take it seriously? If you're a serious student of the Bible, that even theology then and the religious ideas are time-bound, historically based, culturally conditioned, and socially constructed. We no longer can repeat the old story or sing the old song. Our praise and worship must be both traditional and contemporary because we're different. One shoe doesn't fit all. A progressive musician proclaims, the varieties of religious experience call forth hymns and songs emerging from the varieties of cultures, personality types, and religious expression. Our worship and song reflects the diversity and embraces inclusivity. In the words of an old hymn in which I am more familiar and reminding myself, new occasions teach new duties. Time makes ancient good uncouth. Ancient truth, actually, uncouth. They must upward still and onward. Those who would keep abreast with truth. Truth is marching on. There's a new thing. Let's follow, learn, and rush along to keep relevant. A continuous process. So I don't have time to smell roses. I'm being challenged And with the kind of background I have, I cannot, for the life of me, not to be involved. It takes a lot of effort. This old brain gets tired more easily. It must be recognized. Not only do we keep abreast with truth, but continue to explore a new truth. We cannot stay on the safety of our theological shores, make it a comfort zone, and not be challenged, and hear the call to launch out into the deep and cast your net on the other side. It also must be recognized that we are not talking about words. We are talking about how the words come alive in practice and in the real world. We are to live in a mood of praxis, applying our theology to our living. Only then can we hope to reach closer to this elusive truth. There will be differences in our theology. Inclusivity calls us that we do not just tolerate our differences and be so kind and loving to one another. If I will discover some new truth which you don't have, I am prepared to share it. And if you discover, you must be prepared to help me. And each one of us must be open, and each one of us is work in progress. Our work is not completed. There is no stop. God made us that way. God made life that way. Otherwise, it is simply very simple to ask God to help. We have to be engaged. There's no choice. Or we are cheating ourselves, or making a mockery of our inclusivity. I struggle with it. Believe you me, I struggle with it. I have to control myself. I have to check myself. Please be open. I could knock it all the time inside me. We must not succumb to close the door to other schools of thought. We have to be open and interact and learn from one another. Mark passed me a book that he mentioned. It's a very intriguing question. If God made you this way as an LGBT, what do so-called LGBT teachers have to teach the entire Christian community? What are the lessons that we learn from your experience in a church like this? Are you able to produce something new revelations for the enrichment of our human community? We dare not submit ourselves literally in the mantra, "The Bible tells me so." Or the other jingle. A jingle it is. The Bible says it, I believe in it, and that settles it. We all read with different lenses. What settles me may not settle the other person, but we have to act according to our convictions, honestly and with full integrity. And then be open to other insights. In the final analysis, we dare not claim final ultimate truth. The theological journey never ends. Open process. And honestly, we only claim tentative truth for this moment. The next moment changes and demands new responses. One of the criterion that I hang on to, I must examine what I believe. What good does it do to me? I have made a certain decision. Has this decision, this belief, make me a better person and allow me a process of transformation? Does it make the community a better human community, a more inclusive one as well? We are familiar with the Buddhist emphasis on love and compassion. They are known for it. And one of the things they will always say, they don't care what you say, what you believe. Is it doing any harm? Do no harm is the way in which they evaluate and judge themselves. Our own Prophet Micah, he has told you, O mortal, what is good? And what does the Lord require of you? But to do justice and to love kindness and to walk humbly with your God. Simple. Should be clear. Do not need scholastic interpretation. Moving here, FCC, they did not choose it. Our address is Commonwealth. It is an old English word, weal, W-E-A-L, translated as wealth, and it's about our well-being. I'm reminded of Jeremiah when he spoke to the exiles and tried to comfort them, that seek the welfare of the city to which you have been exiled, even though you keep on longing to return to Jerusalem. For it is in their welfare you get your own. Then this epistle of Barnabas, which did not get into the Bible. If they did not get into the Bible, they cannot forget this word. Do not live entirely isolated lives, having retreated into yourselves as if you were already fully justified. But gather instead to seek together the common good. So it has been my own personal mantra. What good have we done in our relationship with Jesus, whom we adore, to my life and to the life of the community at large? All are God's people. Without brackets, without reservation. Here in FCC at Commonwealth, we are constantly reminded of common weal, or the common welfare, or the common good. It will become an unceasing challenge to us unless we move away from this place. As long as the majority of the LGBT community outside has not embraced this church, as they do not embrace your church, we need to examine our work with great humility. As long as LGBT people come and stay for a while and come and go, we have to review our congregational life, yours and mine. As long as other people within the faith communities, other faith communities, and beyond are not attracted to FCC, we have to evaluate and be harsh and critical about our performance. We must labor with them and envision the shaping of the human community with love and compassion, peace with justice. we in our respective places and contexts, similar or different, unique in everyone's situation. We must labor with them and envision the shaping of a human community, incorporating those important principles of living, or else we all perish. We have to be honest and bold that we have not responded fully to the challenge. I challenge myself. Let us not make a mockery of our inclusivity. Do we recognize we are no different from other churches, from our own, except for the acceptance of the issue of homosexuality? There's a trend, and in the course of time, more of our mainline churches, and already it's happening in the United States, that they will be gay affirming and reconciling congregations. Are we aware that the decline of church membership in the largest Southern Baptist convention in the United States is happening? And more youths are unchurched, and the future of the religion, in the way we seek it now, for most of us, is bleak. If we are not on the road to change and transformation. Look to the day, and it is dawning, when homosexuality is no longer an issue in all our churches. People out here, many people out there are spiritual and not religious, seeking for alternatives. Can we hear, and can you go back to your own churches? Engage and become authentically inclusive in church life, faithful in its ministry and mission to all of God's people? All our congregations, here and anywhere, God has placed us into innovative and experimental modes, ready to make any paradigm shift, or else we are stuck. And history tells us very clearly, especially in Western Europe, the church life is withering. And we are standing and dying. The time has come. And it is now. No more excuses. We know too much. To recognize and examine and evaluate and explore what we are doing in our respective churches. Each one of us has a different and a unique context. Embrace diversity and work together. And this is to take into account the utter necessity for inclusivity, because love of God is not for you and me alone, but for all, regardless. This is the challenge that we face, individually and collectively. To renew, as our theme states, to enhance and fulfill the sacred mission and ministry of the truly inclusive church. Before I end, just to pause, to catch my breath, and to continue the journey on. So far for me, this 10-year period has been the most fulfilling and satisfying journey in all my 50, 60 years of pastoral experience. I look with anticipation for the future. For in the words of my favorite New England poet, Robert Frost, the woods are lovely, dark, and deep. But I have promises to keep and miles to go before I sleep. Miles to go before I sleep. Amen.